Anyway, James Harden to the Clippers, question mark. Let's talk about this because this is I was reading about this earlier today and it was frustrating me, but I get where James Harden is coming from, right? So as we know, James Harden opted into his $35 million player option. He then requested a trade, and the rumors and reports are that he wants to go to the Los Angeles Clippers. And for the longest, I'm like, dang, James, why you want to leave? Because personally, if you go to the Clippers, I can see that. But when the rumors were coming out that he wanted to be, when he was going to be a free agent, opt out and, signed to Houston because they had $65 million, I'm like, yo, why? Unless you just really want to bag that bad, you're not winning nothing in Houston. I truly, personally, still to this day, think his best option to win a championship or at least contend for a deep run in the championship, maybe outside of the Clippers, is staying with the Philadelphia 76ers. But it's reported that he want to go to the Clippers. I'm like, for the longest, why? I was really trying to figure out what was going on here. Essentially, it's believed that there was some understanding of like, yo, I'm gonna scratch y'all back, y'all scratch mine. That happened last summer when James Harden took that pay cut and signed that 2-year, like $60 million deal where he's going to be making 35 million last year and then this coming year. And the plan was supposed to be he was going to opt out of this upcoming season. The Sixers were going to throw him a bag. But Daryl Morey was like, I don't know if I want to do that no more, which I also understand. I wasn't trying to throw James Harden a bag either. And essentially, it's twofold from Daryl Morey's standpoint. Sixers GM, if you don't know who Daryl Morey is, he's Sixers GM. He used to be Rockets GM, and he was James Harden's GM while he was in Houston, so they have some history together. Daryl Morey was like, we're not going to talk to James Harden yet about free agency. His cover was he didn't want to talk about free agency before he was illegally allowed to talk about free agency because the Sixers actually got fined last summer for talking to PJ Tucker too early. And they ended up talking to PJ Tucker and Daniel House too early. And they ended up losing all their second round draft picks for this year's draft and next year's draft. And I want to say we got fined as well. So he's trying to avoid that. But also, I think in the back of his head, he was like, yo, James, go see what you're worth out there on the free market. You want to be a free agent so bad and you want us to give you a bag, go see if anybody else will give you a bag. Because you're not just going to force us to give you a bag if we didn't have to, which I'm not mad at him doing that. I like that because I didn't want to give James Harden a bag. So James Harden's like, okay, let me go see what's available. The Rockets were like, well, I mean, we got love for you, but we don't want you. And then no other team has the money to pay him. But no other team has the money to pay him what he would want, right? So he opts in and demands a trade, and now he wants to go to the Clippers. Don't love it, personally, speaking from a Sixers fan. I already said I would love to see him stay, but in my head, I was like, well, what the heck did the Clippers even got? What would that even look like? That Clippers trade ain't that hard if they really want to make it happen. I think it's just Daryl Morey's going to hold his feet and try to see if he can convince James Harden to stay or get something better for him. Because I'm looking at the Clippers, and between either a combination of any of these guys can make this trade happen, basically. Nicholas Batum, Robert Covington, Marcus Morris, Norman Powell, Zubac. Probably not Zubac just because we just re-signed Paul Reed and Montrez. And I feel like we got another big too, but this might be slipping off the top of my head. But between those guys, they all make between $10 and $18 million. You put 2-3 of them guys together and you come up with James Harden's $35 million. They can throw in a couple of picks, and honestly, that trade's probably, wrapped up nicely and done. I think Daryl Morey's going to hold out to see if he can get something more. I think Daryl Morey also has proven that he's willing to hold out a while because we kept Ben Simmons all the way up until almost to the trade deadline when he made it clear that he wasn't going to play for us. So Daryl Morey's not afraid of dragging his feet on a trade. I'm not mad at that. Sometimes it works out. The only thing that worries me about that is this is a team that's a complete opposite situation from the Portland Trailblazers, where they don't have to move quickly because they're not necessarily desperate because they want to rebuild. The Sixers are honestly a little bit more desperate. They want to move quickly. Joel Embiid, we all know, wants to win a championship. He wants to compete for championships. He is still under, I looked it up. Joel is still under contract for 4 years. He has a player option for the 26-27 season, so he's going to be here for a while. But as we're seeing with Damian Lillard, who's a superstar that's still under contract, stars be asking for trades. even when they're under contract. And if for some reason Joel Embiid feels like we're not handling his opportunity to or his chances to win a championship well, he could ask out. Same conversations that people were having about Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks if they didn't retain Kyrie Irving. So it just has a lot of implications for a James Harden trade. I think there are pros and cons of keeping and letting James Harden go. As much as James Harden is a polarizing player, as much as James Harden has playoff deficiencies that we have seen from time to time, James Harden also basically won 2 of those games in that Boston series for us with those 40-point performances. So I would want him to stay, personally. I think it makes the most sense for him to stay. I get plenty of people who clown me for thinking that because they call him a playoff choker and shrinking when the lights get bright. But my only response would be is a random combination of Nicholas Batum, Robert Covington, Marcus Morris, or Norman Powell from the Clippers are not better, even if we get 3 of those guys. In my mind, 3 of those guys is not better than having one James Harden, simply because we saw how good James Harden and Joel Embiid were this year together. Let's see what they're talking about. The chat is being very weird and like loading in chunks. So let me see what y'all talking about. That's the other piece I thought that was interesting for the Clippers. You saying Russ, Harden, Bones, and Man. Bones ain't there no more, I thought. Or am I tripping? Bones or Man, one of them not there. I'm almost certain Terrence Mann isn't there anymore. Terrence Mann. I might be tripping. Then is it Bones that's not there? Or am I thinking of a different team? No, I might be tripping. No, yeah. All right. I'm just tripping. That is a lot of minutes for those 4 guys. And that's what I thought too. Literally, that's what I wrote down. I was like, why would he want to go there after they just signed Russ? Bones and Man to the Sixers? No? Like, maybe one of them, but also like that's a huge step back from James Harden. That's what Norman Powell is still a Clipper. Like, that's such a huge step back. And that's the only reason I'm like, why? Personally, Daryl Morey, I'm saying keep him. Like, I don't know, throw him out there, force him to play. But in the same breath, we've seen what James Harden does when he don't want to be somewhere. He put on that fat suit, he start bricking everything, and then it's like, well, all right, go on then, because you hooping horrible. I don't know. The Clippers guard locker room will be loaded and not in a good way. That is facts. Lineup of Russ, Harden, Kawhi, PG, and Zubac. That would be interesting, but let me see. Somebody said something that I thought was interesting. Joel Embiid gonna request a trade after next year. That's my real fear. That's a real fear of mine, bro. And y'all know how much I rock with Joel. That's a real fear of mine. That lineup is gross. I agree. Why is this being so odd today? This chat is being real finicky. YouTube gotta get their stuff together. Somebody mentioned something that I can't find it now. I saw it when I was scrolling through. Essentially, they was like, what would it look like? Would y'all want Russ in return? And when I tell you a lineup of Russ, I don't think Russ would fit well. It depends how the rest of that roster looks. While the Sixers, I think, have some decent shooting, I think James Harden was a really big portion of that spacing and shooting. Russ and Joel Embiid together on the same team sounds very similar to Russ and Ben Simmons on the same team, and I don't want that again. I don't want to. They made it work a little bit to the tune of a bunch of second round exits, but I don't want that again. We've lived that timeline. We've lived in that multiverse already. I don't want that again. Look at the Rockets in 2019. It was way worse. That's nasty. Rockets in 2019 weren't. Was that the year that Chris Paul was on there? They weren't horrible. They just didn't hit no shots in the game 7. Missed 30-something free 3-pointers. Yeah. Honestly, ultimately, and I'll move on from James Harden with this comment here. Ultimately, I think it comes down to this. Trading away James Harden at any level for whatever package we get essentially is going to be a downgrade. no matter what package we get back from him, it's going to be a downgrade. I know a lot of Sixers fans are really high on Maxey. I think he's a tremendous talent as well. I think he has potential future All-Stars in his future for sure. But I think the big piece that we will miss if James Harden isn't on this team is his playmaking. That man led the league in assists last season. Assists per game. Let me put it that way. He led the league in assists per game last season. Maxey, as much as I like the way his game is, he is a transition player. He is a bucket getter. He is not a playmaker. And the team, the reports that I'm seeing on what a potential Clippers trade would look like, unless we somehow get Russ back in it, and I don't like the idea of that, but maybe for his playmaking, Nick Batum, Robert Covington, Marcus Morris, Norman Powell, they are not playmakers. And even if they throw in either a Terrence Mann or a Bones Highland, as much as I like their game, there's a reason the Clippers were trying to get either John Wall or Russ. There's a reason the Clippers were looking still for more point guards, because those guys aren't playmakers either. I love their game. They're just not playmakers. And if James Harden does get traded away from the Sixers, if he does lead the Sixers, one of the biggest holes or return pieces that I think Daryl Morey needs to focus on is getting a playmaker in return, or after the trade, making another move to solidify some sort of playmaking. Because without James Harden, that team has no playmaking at all. All right.